Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are standing barefoot on a cracked savanna that smells like dust and memories. The horizon shimmers with rising heat, and in the distance, a shape too large to be a rock twitches. Elephants. A whole herd of them. They move slow, deliberate, as if the very weight of their lineage presses down on every step. But something is off. The light is too sharp, the shadows too short. You squint upward and there it is, a brightness that feels wrong, like someone dialed up the sun's volume just a little too much. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Also, drop your location and the current time where you are. I always love knowing where you're listening from. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You shuffle along the edge of a crumbling ridge, the grit stinging your ankles. Beneath your feet, centuries of sand lie packed with secrets, some of them ancient enough to belong to creatures whose memories didn't fit into language. The elephants ahead stop. One raises her trunk into the air, swinging it gently like a slow pendulum. You freeze. It's not fear exactly. It's recognition, something in your own bones twitching, remembering what yours forgot. You see them grouped in the shallows of a dry riverbed, their leathery skin pulsing with movement, coated in dust like sacred ash. The calves huddle tighter. The matriarch moves to the front, towering ears, flicking back and forth with eerie rhythm. Something in the air has changed. Not cooler, not warmer, just different. Like the atmosphere itself has thickened, syrup slow pregnant with silence. They say that elephants can sense tremors before earthquakes or storms days before the first drop. But that day, according to oral tradition of tribes long buried under sand, they sensed shadowfall. That's what they called it, shadowfall. Not an eclipse, not a celestial alignment. Just the falling of shadow. Your skin prickles. You're not religious, but this feels like waiting for a god to arrive late to their own funeral. In some old village stone buried deep in Namibia's inland valleys, there's a worn carving of an elephant with tears under each eye. No context, no pattern, just two arcs etched with careful fingers right below the eye sockets. Was it mourning? Was it myth? Historians still debate whether those tears were symbolic or observational. Whether ancient peoples really believed elephants wept or just wanted to believe something so old and wise could feel grief the way we do. The ground beneath you vibrates, no hums. A low-frequency resonance, not sound but sensation. The herd stomps in unison once. Dust billows. You cough. Another stomp, this time fainter. A signal, a warning. Or just the earth responding to something your instruments can't track. Odd fact, elephants communicate with infrasound that can travel dozens of kilometers. They murmur to each other through soil and sky, conducting symphonies you'll never hear. You reach the crest of a dry hill, knees aching, lips cracking from the heat, and suddenly you're there. The full herd below, at least 30 strong, arranged in a loose spiral formation. The matriarch in the center, again slowly lowering her trunk to touch a darkened rock. Around her, the other elephants shift almost nervously, ears, folding eyes, blinking too slowly. And just like that, the sun dims. Not all at once. It's not a light switch, it's a fade. Like someone drawing sheer curtains across your reality. You blink. A crescent of darkness bites into the sun's edge and the air grows quieter still. You hear your own heartbeat louder than the bird song that used to fill this sky. Somewhere near your ankle, a lizard darts for cover. You're jealous. You want to hide too. The matriarch begins to sway. Not dramatically, not in fear, but in what looks eerily like ceremony. Her massive body shifts left, then right, her feet lifting in slow motion steps. The others follow. One by one, the herd begins to move not forward, not away, but around, orbiting something unseen. The indigenous Khoisan believe that during eclipses, the world's balance tilted, and elephants helped realign it by stamping the old rhythms back into the earth. It's easy to scoff at myths like that from the comfort of air-conditioned laboratories. Less easy when you're out here and the world does feel tilted. In that moment, you don't know whether the elephants are scared or praying, but you do know this: they are not running, and neither are you. The light continues to vanish. The sky isn't black, it's the wrong kind of blue. Birds have gone silent. The insects, too, all except one distant cricket that refuses to take the hint. Another odd fact: during a 1922 eclipse in Sudan, a group of British researchers noted that elephants under observation formed tight circles, trumpeted low, and wept from both eyes. The tears were collected and bottled. No one's quite sure what happened to them. The matriarch pauses. Her head turns. You're not close enough to see her eyes, but something about her gaze fixes on the sun's vanishing face, and her trunk lifts again, not to threaten, not to speak, just to feel. The world becomes shadow, and in that moment the dust field holds its breath. The air begins to pulse, not with noise but with pressure. You feel it in your eardrums, in the soft tissue beneath your ribs, the kind of tremble that doesn't shake the ground but stirs the blood. A dozen elephants shift their weight hooves, sinking deeper into the powdery soil as if trying to brace themselves for something you can't see. And just when you think it can't get weirder, it does. A breeze rises. It's gentle at first, the kind that brushes your cheek like a memory of someone who once kissed you goodbye. Then it swells, gaining urgency. Dry leaves skitter across the cracked ground like little claws. The smell changes. You sniff reflexively earth sweat, something smoky and old. The kind of scent you usually associate with forgotten places and things that don't like being remembered. You reach for your water pouch and pause halfway. You don't want to look away, not because you're afraid of missing the eclipse, but because something tells you the elephants are watching you just as much as you're watching them. That's when the matriarch makes the sound. It's low, not a trumpet, not a rumble. It's like a throat full of sorrow being emptied through a tunnel of skin. The others respond not with noise, but with motion. They sway again, right, left, then still. The wind stops. It doesn't slow, it stops. Like someone turned off a giant fan mid-whirl. Your ears pop. You look up. The sun is now a black disk wrapped in fire. Totality. There are no words, so you don't speak. Neither do the elephants. For those few terrifying minutes, it's like the planet remembers something too ancient for us to comprehend and forgets everything else. All laws, all motion. It just listens. Then the air starts moving again, but it's changed. Cooler now, heavier, like something left behind a piece of itself in the sky. The trunks lift again, sniffing, testing. Their skin seems to pulse, the creases deepening as if holding water or secrets. And here's your authoritative fact of the night: elephants have an olfactory bulb twice the size of a human brain. They smell water from miles away. They smell sickness, emotion, decay. They probably smell your fear. The matriarch rumbles again, slightly louder this time, more of a call than a cry. Calves inch forward. Mothers pivot to let them through. You watch as one adolescent moves awkwardly, trunk curled around the tip of its tail in what looks like worry. It brushes its face once, twice, 3 times. If you didn't know better, you'd swear it was wiping away tears. Now, let's talk about this air. It's wrong. It's shimmering with something that isn't heat. You step forward by instinct, drawn closer like a moth to fire, despite every bad documentary that says don't do that. The wind rises again, but this time in bursts, warm, then cold, then warm again. It's like walking through the breath of a dying god. Odd fact: in 1871, a naturalist named Kitchener claimed that elephants moved in spiral formations during solar eclipses because they believed the sun was dying and could only be reborn through rhythm. His colleagues laughed. Then he disappeared into the Zambian bush and was never seen again, though his field notes were found decades later folded inside a baobab tree like a love letter. You blink. The herd begins to spread, but not aimlessly. Their trunks lower to the ground as they move in single file toward a line of thorny acacias. The matriarch stops. She sniffs once, twice, then digs. Just one massive foot pressing into the earth until the topsoil splits. You step closer. The air makes it hard to breathe, but you can't stop now. Your pulse is in your teeth. A younger elephant joins the matriarch and uses her trunk to scoop away the loosened dust. A dark patch appears. You recognize it: wet soil, possibly even water. Historians still debate whether eclipses triggered ancestral memory in elephants, prompting them to seek ancestral wells buried under newer soil. It sounds absurd until you see it happen with your own eyes. The matriarch steps back and lets the others in. Trunks dip. Ears flutter. They drink. Not frantically, reverently. You lean against a boulder and finally take that sip from your pouch. The water tastes stale warm. Somehow worse than the liquid gurgling up from the hole the elephants just found. You feel small, irrelevant, and kind of honored to be ignored. The air still hums, but softer now. The worst of the pressure has passed. You can hear insects again, tentative buzzes, wings, testing air like rafts in a flood. You glance at the sky. A ring of sunlight bleeds around the blackened sun. You're still in totality, but not for much longer. And suddenly you realize what the matriarch's cry was. It was a warning, a roll call, and an invitation. You watch as a few of the elephants turn and face the sun again. Their trunks hang limp. Their eyes blink slow, uncertain. You blink with them. You feel odd, like your body remembers something from before your mind existed. And then, just like that, the light comes back. It isn't gentle. It stabs. Harsh lines carve through the terrain. Shadows leap back into place like scolded children. The temperature surges. You squint, raise your hand, and hear somewhere behind you a bird remember how to sing. The elephants don't trumpet. They don't cheer. They simply return to movement. As if nothing happened. As if the universe didn't just flinch. But you don't move. Not yet. You're still half-shadowed, kneeling in the afterglow when the herd rearranges itself. Not hurried, not calm, just deliberate, like a choir resetting between movements. The matriarch circles once, casting a long slanted shadow across her own calves. One by one, the others begin to fall into place. You count 3 tiny ones, new enough that their ears still flop like soggy leaves, and their steps sound like wet fruit hitting sand. Each is nudged inward. 2 larger females move in behind them, forming a sort of living barricade. Trunks swing low, heads dip. It's not just protective, it's ceremonial. You step closer again, gently this time. If you breathe too loudly, it'll break the moment. You keep your weight on your toes like a thief at church. A juvenile glances your way just once, then dismisses you entirely. You're not part of the ritual. You're not a threat. You're just background noise. The formation tightens. Here's a real historical fact for you: female elephants form tight matrilineal social units, often led by the eldest grandmother. They teach, they defend, they mourn. Some herds have been tracked for generations. Scientists have documented them standing vigil over fallen companions for days, refusing to leave the body even in heat, even under threat. But today isn't about death, it's about fear reverence. The oldest baby lets out a chirp, yes, chirp, like a rubber balloon hiccuping, and is immediately soothed by a trunk pressed gently to its back. It goes quiet. The silence returns, but now it's full of tension, like breath held too long. Then out of nowhere, the entire group emits a low, resonant rumble. It's not disorganized. It's not chaotic. It's synchronized. Like monks humming in a cave somewhere deep under the earth. You feel it in your teeth, your gums itch. The air around your throat vibrates like you're inside a cello. Some scientists believe that low-frequency rumbles in elephants are used not just for communication but for calming the nervous systems of calves. It's essentially an ancient lullaby sung with rib cages. You swallow, unsure if you're soothed or unnerved. Maybe both. Odd fact: The exact pitch of those rumbles can change with the moon cycle. Recordings show variations during eclipses and new moons. Nobody knows why. Some think it's gravitational, some say it's hormonal. A few insist it's spiritual. They don't get tenure usually. The matriarch shifts again. Slowly, gracefully. Her feet barely disturb the dust now. She moves toward the outer edge of the formation and brushes her shoulder against a smaller female. There's no sound, no signal, but the whole group moves in response, reforming into a loose column. And here's the weirdest part. They don't leave. They wait. You sit. Legs out, fingers in the dirt. The sun has returned fierce and unapologetic, but the herd lingers in their formation like a photograph of a parade that never marched. A gust of wind whistles between you and the nearest tree. A seed pod rattles like a warning. You glance behind you. That's when you notice something truly strange. The birds haven't come back. It's been almost 20 minutes since the light returned, but the canopy remains eerily quiet. No chirps, no clicks, not even the usual shriek of whatever bird always wakes up grumpy. Just elephant breath. And your own? You whisper mostly to yourself. What are they waiting for? And then you realize they're waiting to make sure it's really over. Ancient oral traditions from India tell of sun stealers, mythic creatures that bit chunks out of the sun, sometimes spitting them back out, sometimes not. Villagers claimed elephants would stamp and cry until the sun returned their grief, a kind of magical negotiation. Sounds silly, right? Except now you're watching a modern herd behave like they've inherited a 1,000-year-old anxiety. They don't move until the light reaches a certain temperature. You feel it happen like an oven preheating. The grass brightens. Shadows sharpen. Only then does the matriarch give a final subdued trumpet. The rest follow. You stand, dust yourself off, and trail behind them, far enough not to intrude close enough to witness. The calves stay at the center, still surrounded. You hear another of those chirps and then nothing. Just the steady whisper of large bodies moving across a stunned earth. You pause near a crooked tree with a lightning scar running through its trunk. It's older than you, older than any city you've lived in. You place a hand on it gently and imagine what it's seen. How many eclipses? How many herds? How many people who thought they were special? The tree says nothing. You smile anyway. The elephants march forward slow and solemn. No panic now. Just motion. The kind of motion that says, we do this every time. We've always done this. We'll do it again. And you follow until the sun reaches its proper arc. The sky warms fully, and your own fear, the one you didn't notice until now, finally lets go. You never forget the first time the world forgets to make noise. It's like a joke without a punchline. You expect wind. You expect some creak from the trees, some hiss from the grass, even a grunt from your own stomach. But what you get is nothing. No footsteps, no snorts, not even the insects ticking off the usual complaints about temperature and territory. And then it gets weirder. You step forward and it's as if the sound of your own movement gets absorbed, like your feet are pressing into the flesh of some sleeping giant, and it doesn't want to be disturbed. The earth muffles you. You check your ears just to be sure they're working. Still attached. Still collecting useless silence. Then, just on the cusp of that unbearable stillness, you hear it. A whisper. Not a voice. Not wind. It's like fabric shifting in a dark hallway. A friction of something vast turning in place. You hold your breath. The elephants? Frozen. Not one twitches. Not a trunk sways. Not an eye blinks. They look like statues dropped mid-march, ancient and full of warning. Even the calves stop fidgeting. One has a bit of twig stuck to its cheek. It doesn't bother to brush it off. You turn slowly, trying to find the source of whatever just changed, and that's when you notice it. The sun's gone wrong again. Not fully, just slightly. It's brighter than it should be, but the shadows are too long. Like someone stretched them with wet fingers. You glance at your own, except you don't have one. There's your foot, there's the sun, there's the ground, but no shadow. You laugh under your breath, half panicked, half wondering if this is heat stroke. Then you move your hand up, wave it in the air. Nothing. It's the kind of moment you file under deal with emotionally later. Because then the matriarch lets out a sound that doesn't belong in this world. It's not trumpeting. It's not warning. It's pleading. A long, low ululation like a cello string being pulled through wet sand. It doesn't rise. It sinks. Straight into your bones, into the hollows of your knees like your body is a bell that forgot how to ring. And here's a historical fact that nobody really teaches. During the 11th century, Persian astronomers documented strange behavior in animals during eclipses, elephants included. One text mentions a night of silent beasts where creatures walked like ghosts and gave no reply to their masters. The source, a merchant who recorded the entire eclipse from the back of a moving elephant. That scroll now lives in fragments inside a museum basement, mostly ignored. You kneel for no good reason other than that you feel like you should, Ellen. The matriarch's eyes pass over you and you suddenly feel guilty, like you've interrupted something sacred. A ritual meant for those born heavier and wiser. She lifts her trunk toward the sky, and you feel the air shift again. This time it sinks, like the weight of the sun pressing back into the soil. And with it comes a strange sensation. Your fingers itch. Your chest tightens. You blink, and the shadow returns, but it isn't yours. It's the herd's, stretched and smeared like oil over sand. You shuffle backward without meaning to. Even your shadow joins the retreat late, dragging behind like it's reluctant to come home. Historians still debate whether ancient people feared eclipses more for the darkness or for what came with it. Some petroglyphs in South Africa show animals with missing shadows, bodies outlined but hollow. Others depict humans holding sticks over their own heads, perhaps trying to summon the missing silhouettes, or maybe trying to stake them in place. But elephants. No one carved their shadows, which either means they didn't lose them or what they lost couldn't be drawn. The herd shifts again, slowly now. The urgency gone, replaced by a dreamy kind of motion. One foot, then another. It's like they're sleepwalking across time. You stay low, fingers tracing grooves in the dirt, ancient prints now dried and packed, left by those who passed before. You think of all the elephants that march this way, unaware of your kind. Or maybe not. Maybe they've always known. Odd fact, elephants were one of the only species known to recognize themselves in mirrors. They also visit the bones of their dead, and pause sometimes for hours with no explanation anyone dares to offer. The matriarch pauses. She raises her trunk again, but not skyward this time. She points at you, and suddenly the silence breaks. All at once the insects return. The birds scream back into being. A hawk wheels overhead with an indignant shriek like someone pressed play after a long pause. The calves squeal. One trips. The mothers lean in to comfort. Life resumes. But you're still down there kneeling, confused, listening to the buzz blinking at the sun. You've got your shadow back, and you're not sure you wanted it. The next time you blink, the sun looks normal, almost boring. It's back to its everyday job of being slightly too bright and not giving you enough vitamin D to feel better about your decisions. But your body doesn't believe it. Your pulse hasn't slowed. Your ears still ring from silence, and your shadow, now behaving itself again, still doesn't feel trustworthy. You glance around. The elephants haven't run. They haven't stampeded. They've resumed walking as if the sky didn't just temporarily vanish, but not aimlessly. They're heading somewhere, and you've finally decided you're going with them. A few paces behind the slowest calf, you trail along your boots, crunching on gravel that's softer than it looks. Your lips are dry, your water's gone. But curiosity, as usual, is more powerful than thirst. Somewhere between logic and superstition, you decide that this herd knows something you don't. And you're not about to miss the reveal. That's when you see her. The matriarch paws atop a slight rise in the land. She stops, ears spread wide, trunk frozen midair. She's listening, or remembering. You follow her gaze and your breath catches. They're carved into the cliffside ahead, half swallowed by sand and time, is a dark cave mouth. Not the kind you'd notice unless you were looking for it. Definitely not the kind you'd think belonged to elephants. But they go to it. One by one, they veer right, filing toward the entrance like commuters returning to a terminal that hasn't been used in centuries. The matriarch hesitates for just a second before leading them inside. You shouldn't follow them. You know this, but you do. The cave is cooler. Not cold, just relieved of sun. It breathes the way cellars do. Damp and honest. Inside the walls glisten faintly with old mineral streaks. The floor is smooth, worn down by feet much larger and much older than yours. Then you see them bones, elephant bones, piled neatly along the wall, not discarded, not scavenged, placed. Skulls resting upright, some tilted like they were nodding off before they fossilized. Tastes interlocked in delicate balance. You touch one gently. It's not fossilized, not yet, just ancient. This isn't a burial ground, it's a memory vault. Here's your authoritative fact. Elephants have been documented, returning to the remains of their dead even years later to touch, sniff, and rest with them. No other animal does this with such consistency, except arguably us. You sit down beside a tusk that looks like it's been carved, but not by tools. Closer inspection reveals tiny grooves, shallow scratches. Repeated rubbing, possibly from trunks, possibly from grief. Historians still debate whether ancient humans and elephants shared sacred spaces like this or whether one inherited the rituals of the other. Some say early hunter-gatherers watched elephants mourn and mimicked their reverence. Others argue the opposite, that elephants being smart copied what they saw humans do. You press your palm against the stone and feel a strange heat. Or is it pressure? Like the wall remembers being something else, flesh maybe. Or bone. Then your eyes catch something further back. Charcoal, smudged on the wall. You step closer, kneel. It's not writing, it's a picture. Crude but unmistakable, a disc with lines radiating from it. The sun. Beside it, a streak of black across its face. An eclipse. And below it, elephants. 4 of them drawn like stick figures with oversized ears, all with dark marks beneath their eyes. Tears. You stare. Not because it confirms anything, but because someone long before you stood here and thought the same question you're asking now. Do elephants cry during eclipses? Odd fact, the human tear duct evolved not just to lubricate the eye, but to signal distress socially. Crying is not purely physical. It's communicative. Some researchers argue elephants' temporal gland secretions, which flow near the eyes when they're distressed, may serve a similar purpose. Not quite tears, but not tears either. You hear movement behind you. You spin, but it's only the matriarch. She stepped inside quietly, not to challenge you, just to join. She walks to one of the skulls and lowers her trunk. She brushes it once, twice, then presses her forehead to the bone. You look away, suddenly ashamed to be watching something so private. A few younger elephants linger near the wall drawings. One sniffs the charcoal, then backs away like it's sacred. Another chirps uncertain. The matriarch lifts her head, and this time she does cry. Not a trumpet, not a bellow, just a sound like deep breath exhaled through sorrow. You know grief when you hear it. Doesn't matter what species. She turns, walks past you without acknowledgement. But you swear just for a second her trunk brushes your hand, like a thank you or a goodbye. You follow them out. The light outside has changed again, softer, less aggressive. The sun no longer feels like a wound, and your shadow, now whole and obedient, falls forward at your feet. You don't talk about the cave afterward. Not to yourself, not in your notes, not even to the voice recorder you usually whisper into like a digital confession booth. Some places strip language from you. You left yours there somewhere between that tusk and the drawings. You walk in silence now, trailing behind the herd as they trudge across a valley of pale grass and wind-polished stones. It smells different here, less dry, more earthy, like something's been growing beneath the soil for a very long time and might just burst through if the sky blinks wrong again. You're not sure where they're going. But the path is too smooth, too deliberate to be random. It curves gently along a ravine edge, and every few steps you spot bones tucked into niches, skulls, ribs, the odd spiral of vertebrae. But none scavenged, none cracked. It's like the bones came here to sleep. Then the ground changes. You notice it first through your feet, softer, spongier, as if the valley's holding its breath. The color shifts too, from brown to a muted gray, then charcoal. Black flecks appear in the soil. You kneel and scoop some up. Ash. Not fresh, but not ancient either. You look up and understand why. Just ahead, emerging from the gentle slope like a forgotten scar, is another cavity in the rock. But this one's been burned. The opening is blackened and the air here smells faintly of soot. Still warm. Or maybe memory just holds heat well. The elephants pause. No urgency, no fear, just respect. And then they do something unexpected. They dance. Well, not like ballet. No pirouettes, but the movement is unmistakable. 3 of them, 2 elders and 1 younger bull, begin to sway. Front feet step forward then back, trunks curl, heads bob. Then they stamp. Once, twice, pause. Again, harder. It's rhythmic, purposeful. You feel it in your chest before your ears catch on. Not a performance, a ritual. You move closer, trying to stay unobtrusive, which is laughable next to something that outweighs your car. But they don't mind. They don't care. You're tolerated. For now. Here's a verified historical fact: fossilized elephant tracks discovered in Namibia's Etosha Pan Show. A repeated pattern of movement that suggests rhythmic behavior almost like dancing. Some scientists argue it's coincidental. Others believe it was ritualistic. Still others suspect the elephants were reacting to seismic vibrations during a regional volcanic event. Historians still debate whether these patterns were spontaneous group behavior or evidence of conscious ceremony, which honestly is a fancy way of saying, we don't know, but it's weird and maybe important. One of the older bulls lets out a sharp, low grunt. The stamping intensifies. Dust swirls. Tiny pebbles bounce. The blackened soil absorbs it all, like a stage set designed to erase footprints. But you still see the pattern: 3 clockwise steps, 2 counterclockwise. Stamp, pause, repeat. Odd fact: some Southeast Asian elephants have been observed swaying in repetitive patterns before storms. Locals call it sky calling. It was once dismissed as stress behavior, until it started happening only during certain lunar phases. The matriarch stands apart from the dancers, watching, not judging, not commanding, just witnessing. And you realize that's your role too. So you sit, cross-legged, silent, watching elephants stamp old rhythms into forgotten ash, their massive bodies strangely graceful in the thickening dusk. Then one of the calves joins. Tentative at first, awkward like a toddler in church mimicking the grown-ups. But then it gets into it, steps, sway, stamp. You grin without meaning to. It's joy, unfiltered and contagious. The other elephants don't interfere. They just make room. You take a breath and realize the air here doesn't feel heavy anymore. It feels full, charged, like the wind is waiting to be told what to do next. You whisper to no one in particular who taught them this, and somewhere the wind answers by doing absolutely nothing. The perfect reply. When the dance ends, it does so without flourish, just stops. No bow, no climax. The dancers pause, breathe, and walk away, like they only remembered the steps for a few minutes, and now the knowledge has drained out of their feet again. You stand slowly. Your legs ache. There's ash clinging to your clothes. Your throat tastes of burnt wood and mystery. The herd begins to move again. But not before one of the dancers, an old female with a limp in her right leg, turns and looks directly at you. No aggression, no curiosity. Just you saw. Now you carry it too. She follows the others. and you're left standing on sacred soot under a wide, unimpressed sky, wondering why the ground still vibrates faintly under your boots. Maybe the dance was for the eclipse, or for the ancestors, or maybe it was just for the earth itself. But whatever it wasn't for you, and you were lucky to be allowed in. The trail away from the ash field isn't marked, but the elephants know it by heart. You follow stepping exactly where their feet have landed, even though it means navigating uneven terrain, slick stone ridges, and sun-baked gullies. The dust here tastes metallic, like it remembers being struck by lightning. The herd moves slowly again, but with purpose, as if there's still one more thing to show you before night swallows the sun for good. You wonder, as your boots crunch over broken shale, if they're aware of you now. Not just tolerating your presence, but accepting it. If the matriarch sees you as a witness or as something else entirely, you can ask. You wouldn't dare. The air cools slightly. Not the kind of cool that comes with altitude, but the kind that arrives when something ancient is near. You cross into a stretch of parched forest, skeletal trees, their bark flaking like old skin, lean together in uneasy silence. The canopy is thin, and every breeze makes it creak in protest. That's when you smell it. Fruit. Not sweet fruit. Not the kind you'd bottle and sell at overpriced wellness stores. This is pungent, borderline rotten. Heavy. You gag a little, but the elephants surge forward energized. You push through a few scraggly branches and find the source. A cluster of strange, low-hanging trees with swollen pods the size of pumpkins. Their skin glistens with purple sheen, almost iridescent in the falling light. Several of the pods have already burst open, their guts oozing onto the cracked earth like jam left in the sun too long. And the elephants are feasting. Slapping trunks tear into the fruit, pulling strands of fibrous meat and tossing them into eager mouths. They groan, grunt, even trumpet in strange, stifled tones. Not joy, not panic, something in between. Here's your historical fact. In parts of Central Africa, there are trees that only fruit once every few years and only during eclipse seasons. Botanists have documented rare cyclical blooms tied not just to rainfall or heat, but to subtle shifts in light levels. And guess which animals know exactly when to arrive? Elephants. Always elephants. You move cautiously toward one of the trees. The stench is worse up close, like vinegar and mildew. You crouch by a burst pod and poke it with a stick. It bubbles faintly. Fermentation. You pull your sleeve over your hand and take a tiny pinch, raising it to your nose. It smells like fear. Not literal fear, but a chemical tang, the same kind that seeps from skin during a panic. You drop it, wipe your hand, watch your fingers like they've been cursed. And here's your odd fact of the night. There's a theory, fringe but weirdly persistent, that certain trees evolved to mimic distress pheromones in their fruit, attracting specific animals who associate those scents with urgency or memory. One paper even suggested this fruit may act as an emotional trigger. Or more bluntly, it makes elephants remember things they'd rather forget. You look back at the herd. Some are devouring the fruit with abandon. Others approach, sniff, and withdraw. A few simply stand nearby, unmoving, heads bowed, and then one collapses. You rush forward before you remember how stupid that is. Elephants don't like sudden movement, but no one charges you. They're too distracted. The fallen elephant is an older male, lean and tired-looking. He groans not from pain, but something deeper. His trunk drags across the ground like it's searching for something it already lost. His eyes are open but unfocused. The matriarch steps toward him. You brace for tension, dominance, hierarchy, but she just touches him, once gently. He lifts his head, and you realize he isn't sick. He's remembering. Whatever was in that fruit has cracked something open inside him, and now he's wading through the ruins of an ancient memory you'll never be allowed to see. He moans again, not in agony, in mourning. You can feel it like a lullaby meant for ghosts. You step back. You don't belong here. Historians still debate whether these fear fruits were mythologized for their smell or their effects. Some ancient tribes avoided them completely. Others gathered them ritually only during eclipses, claiming they could unlock ancestral visions. Most of that lore is gone now, burned, buried, or stolen by museums who misfiled everything under miscellaneous. But the elephants haven't forgotten. The younger ones don't eat it. They just watch. Their trunks curl and uncurl nervously. You wonder if it's instinct or if they've been taught. If grief can be inherited. The matriarch grunts deep and sharp. It echoes. The other adults freeze. Then, as if under command, they retreat from the fruit. The old male rises slowly, shudders, and follows. They're leaving it behind now. The grove of ghosts, the smell of memory, the spoiled sweetness. You turn to go too, but not before catching sight of one final thing. Near the base of one of the trees, barely visible beneath a pile of withered leaves, is a circle of stones. Not natural. Placed. Inside it bones. Small, too small. Not elephant. You don't investigate. Some things you're not supposed to know. You walk away, and the fruit keeps oozing. You don't speak for the next mile, not because you're winded or thirsty or stunned, though you are all three, but because something about that grove stitched your throat shut. The smell still clings to your clothes, a blend of fermented sorrow and unwashed memory. It's in your hair. It's under your nails. You'd scrub your skin with sand if the elephants weren't watching. The trail narrows now. The herd thins into a single file winding between jutting stones carved by wind and time. It's like walking through the ribs of a long-dead creature. Each boulder leans slightly, as if weighed down by invisible history. That's when you spot it, tucked in a crevice, a glint of ivory. You step out of the path, ducking low, and uncover the source, a carved elephant tusk. Thin and whittled, not decorative, it's a charm, simple, crude. Etchings swirl along its surface, no longer readable, but clearly deliberate. Around its base, dried sinew or root is still looped in a crude knot. You've seen one before. In a museum display back home, misattributed to early ceremonial carving, possible fertility object. But now in your dusty hands under the breath of a living herd, it's unmistakable, a talisman. One meant to be left behind, an offering, or a warning. You glance back at the matriarch. She hasn't stopped walking, but her ears have flattened slightly. She knows where you are, she knows what you're holding. You return to the trail, the charm clutched carefully, not pocketed. That feels wrong. Instead, you hang it from a strap on your pack, visible, vulnerable, honest. The herd rounds a bend, and you come upon it all at once, a dry riverbed wide and sun-bleached, rimmed with skeletons of trees that once drank here. The elephants spread out, and just like that, they begin to dig. No fanfare, no trumpet, just foot against dirt trunk sweeping debris. Young and old join in scraping and pounding the ground until the surface begins to shift, to yield. And the dust changes color, from gray to silver brown. Moisture. You kneel and touch the surface where one calf has accidentally kicked toward you. The soil is cool, alive. The matriarch rumbles a low thrum that feels like a command. Two bulls step forward, tusks low, and start scooping with synchronized precision. You swear they were trained. Here's your historical fact: during prolonged droughts, elephants have been known to locate and unearth underground springs that no satellite or soil map predicted. Indigenous peoples in East Africa used to follow herds, not to hunt, but to find water. Some tribes called them well walkers. The trench grows wider, the soil turns damp, a shallow pool forms. No rushing stream, no dramatic geyser, just a puddle, a humble, sacred thing. And one by one the elephants kneel. Not a word you hear often with elephants, is it? But it's the only one that fits. They lower themselves slowly, legs folding, bodies leaning without collapse. Their trunks dangle in the water, some drink, others just rest. As if proximity is enough, as if the memory of water matters more than the water itself. The calves dive in face first, playful, clumsy, unaware that this might be the last pool for 100 miles. The older ones let them. For now. You watch, and think, someone carved that charm. Someone watched these elephants once centuries ago, saw what you're seeing now and decided it mattered. Enough to shape ivory, enough to leave it behind, maybe as reverence, maybe as debt. The matriarch turns slightly trunk, curled around a clump of mud. She flings it over her back without even looking. A second later, a calf copies her less gracefully, more enthusiastically, and splashes the nearest elder in the face. A game. In the middle of a dry world. Odd fact, elephants have been observed mimicking behaviors of their elders years after witnessing them. Not just tools or sounds, gestures. A trunk flick, a foot stomp, a toss of dust. Memory and muscle. You sit down at the edge of the trench and remove your boots. You don't step into the pool, you just dip your feet into the damp earth. It's enough. Coolness seeps through your skin, travels up your spine. Your heartbeat slows. Then you see it, a trail of ivory charms half buried, spaced every few meters along the riverbank. Not many, 5, maybe 6, each different, some newer, some older, some weathered so smooth you almost miss them. A path, a message. Historians still debate whether these charm trails were meant to mark elephant routes, ritual spots, or death sites. Some believe the placement was symbolic alignments with lunar cycles' solar events. Others think they were warnings, don't disturb what walks here. You close your eyes, and the matriarch trumpets not loud but sharp. The calves stop playing. The bulls step back. Trunks raise. The herd regathers. Time to go. Water isn't meant to be hoarded. It's meant to be remembered. You dry your feet with your shirt, lace your boots, and rise. But before you follow, you remove the charm from your pack. You place it gently in the mud where your heels just were facing the pool. Not as a gift, not as a claim, just an echo. And then you walk. The herd doesn't look back. They never do. It takes most of the afternoon to climb the ridge. The elephants don't rush. They never do. You, on the other hand, are a mess, sweating, slipping, nearly cursing aloud every time a loose rock tumbles beneath your boot. The only thing keeping you upright is the knowledge that the matriarch hasn't once turned to see if you're keeping up. You're either trusted to follow or entirely irrelevant. Either way you climb. The path is narrow and winds like a slow thought spiraling upward around the shoulder of a red-streaked hill. Trees are scarce here. Nothing but tufts of brittle grass and the occasional thorn bush, each one clawing at your legs as if the landscape resents your presence. Eventually you reach the top, and then you see it. A clearing, wide, flat, marked with rings of stacked stones, too even, too symmetrical to be natural. The elephants are already inside, stepping slowly around the circles. The youngest calf hesitates, then bounds forward to join. You walk toward the outermost ring. The stones aren't huge, but they're deliberate. Each one stained with the same dark smudges. Not paint, not blood, ash. You kneel beside one. Run your fingers across the surface. It flakes. Rubs off onto your fingertips like charcoal. You feel a breeze stir behind you, warm but not comforting. The matriarch stops in the center of the clearing. She raises her trunk not to trumpet, not to sniff, but to hold still, perfectly still, like a flagpole without a flag. And then the others begin to circle her, clockwise, 3 times. Then they stop, and it is deathly, viscerally silent. Then, as if responding to a signal no human will ever hear, the herd begins to move inward. The calves lie down first, followed by the mothers, and finally the older bulls. Only the matriarch remains standing, her shadow long and flickering, as clouds gather in a sky that promised clear weather this morning. You look around and notice what you almost missed. Each ring of stones contains fragments of tusks. Not whole ones, not clean breaks, chipped, worn, filed down, some arranged in spirals, others laid flat like compass points. You feel your pulse in your ears, and here's your historical fact. Archaeologists excavating highland sites in Eritrea and Ethiopia have uncovered tusk fragments arranged in geometric patterns alongside solar-aligned markers. Most are undecorated. Some contain grooves or notches. None are buried deep, they were meant to be found again. And guess what? They were always near. Old elephant trails. The matriarch lowers her trunk and brushes it across one of the stone rings. Not gently. She presses. Dust flutters into the air. The herd stays low, breathing in unison, like they're waiting for something to return. Odd fact. Some African shamans believe the elephant's trunk served as both nose and antenna, connecting them to invisible forces, including ancestors. They used carved replicas in rituals meant to summon dreams, especially during eclipse seasons. You wonder if you're dreaming now. A rumble spreads through the clearing. Not from the herd, from the earth. Low, subsonic, like a throat clearing beneath your feet. The clouds thicken. Shadows lose their shape, and then the air goes cold. Not chilly, not breezy, cold. You blink and for a split second the sun dims just a fraction. You look up. It's there. Whole. Bright. But something passed in front of it. Not an object, not a bird, a shimmer. You blink again and hear it. A cry. High, tremulous, echoing through the stones like a bell that no one rings. But the elephants don't flinch. They answer. The entire herd rises not in panic but in perfect synchronicity. They raise their trunks skyward, and one by one they release a long, trembling note, not loud, but full. Full of memory. Full of someone. You look at the charm circle again. The ivory pieces seem to glow faintly. It could be the light, or it could be the moment. The matriarch turns to face the sky, her trunk still lifted, her ears flared wide like sails catching an invisible wind. And that's when the whisper begins. Not wind, not voice, just a sound like paper folding in another room. It sweeps across the clearing. Every elephant leans into it, not a way into, as if trying to catch a scent. You don't hear the words, but you feel them. Something old is being read. The matriarch lowers her trunk slowly, her eyes close. And just like that, the sound stops. You swallow. The air is warm again, the sun undisturbed. But you know something passed through here, something wearing the shape of a story. Historians still debate whether these gatherings were lunar rituals, death rites, or migration markers. But the stones don't care what humans debate. They remember. And the elephants remember. And now so do you. The matriarch steps away from the circle. The herd follows. You stay behind, just for a moment, long enough to pick up a shard of old tusk. It's smooth, cool. You hold it to your ear, and for just one breath you think you hear the cry again. Not sadness, not fear, recognition. You don't speak aloud, but your thoughts whisper hard in your head as you descend the ridge. Did that really happen? Was it the altitude? The sun? The smell of fermented fruit still clinging to your nostrils like the memory of an old heartbreak? Or was that real? Did the herd call something down from the sky or summon it up from the ground? There's no one to ask. The elephants have moved on. You scramble to catch up. The terrain dips again down into a shallow basin littered with brittle grasses and half-dead shrubs. A tree looms near the center, dead split down the middle like a lightning strike tried to make a point. The bark is scorched, but around it the air is strangely cool. You feel watched. The elephants pause only briefly here. A few circle the tree. One leans gently against it, then moves on. The matriarch, however, lingers. And so do you. It's the tree. It's too perfectly placed, too symmetrical in its ruin. You step closer and spot something on the inside of its cracked trunk, scratches. Too regular to be natural. Symbols, half-moons, overlapping crescents, a circle with two dots beneath it, eyes. Crying, you reach out and touch the bark. It flakes beneath your fingers. You flinch. Behind you, the herd has stopped again, but not all of them. One calf, barely old enough to have stable footing, is still walking, not with the others past them, straight toward the far side of the basin, alone. You're not the only one who notices. A ripple goes through the herd trunks, raise, ears flutter. But no one moves, not even the matriarch. The calf continues. The wind stirs the grass. The sky pulses with clouds that weren't there a minute ago. Somewhere a distant bird calls out once, then goes silent. You follow, because of course you do. The calf reaches the far side of the basin, and disappears behind a stone outcrop. You scramble after it, breath-shallow boots slipping on the gravel. And then you see it. Another clearing, smaller than the others. No trees, no charms, just a ring of shallow impressions in the dirt. Footprints, elephant footprints, hundreds of them, but all of them facing the same direction, north, and all pointing to nothing, just open land. The calf stands at the edge, trunk raised, ears still. It doesn't cry out, doesn't panic. It simply waits. Then it lets out a tiny sound, not quite a trumpet, more like a question. And from the distance, so faint you'd think it came from your own chest, you hear an answer. Another trumpet. Older, fainter, fading. The calf perks up, steps forward, one step. But the matriarch trumpets sharply now, a sound that halts the wind itself. The calf freezes, and you feel it in your gut. This is the myth. This is the moment the stories talk about. You remember it now. The ones who vanish. The whisper herd. They say there's a clan of elephants that disappears every eclipse walking into light. That isn't sunlight, leaving no trail, no dust, not even dung. Gone, but not dead. Just elsewhere. Odd fact, several indigenous groups in sub-Saharan Africa have myths of elephants that walk through time during celestial events. Some stories describe entire herds vanishing at once. Others say only calves go following invisible ancestors. Sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't. Historians still debate whether these tales emerged from eclipse-induced confusion or if they're rooted in actual mass dispersal events. But none of them mention footprints that point only one way. The calf takes another step. The matriarch bellows, this time loud, sharp final. And the calf stops, shivers, then turns. It walks back, slowly, reluctantly, like it's leaving behind something it almost remembered. You exhale. You didn't realize you'd been holding your breath. When the calf rejoins the herd, several adults move closer, brushing their trunks against its flank, soothing, reminding. The matriarch walks to the edge of the clearing now. She stops where the footprints begin. You expect her to enter, to investigate, to trace them to their origin. She doesn't. She bows her head. You do too. You don't know why, but it feels necessary. You stay that way for a while. Long enough for the sky to darken a little more, long enough for the wind to rise and fall again. And when you open your eyes, the herd is already moving on. You follow one last time, stepping carefully around the prints that point to nowhere. Because nowhere apparently is full of memory, and maybe elephants. The path back out of the basin is quiet, but it's a thick, quiet one that presses against your ribs and hums softly at the base of your spine. The kind of quiet that doesn't want to be broken like glass stretched thin across time. Even the elephants tread more softly now, their steps slower, more careful, like they're walking on the edge of something too sacred to name. You're still behind the herd as always, but closer than before. They no longer glance your way. They know you're part of the evening now. Not permanent, just passing through, like a shadow that learned how to breathe. The light has changed again. It's that strange gold you only get after a storm that never came. Dust hangs in the air like old confetti, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rolls without ever committing to rain. You tilt your face toward the wind. It tastes like change. Or endings. You crest a low hill and see the landscape drop into an open plain, cracked and sun-stripped, interrupted only by an old salt flat gleaming in the distance. And as you step down toward it, the first drop of rain hits your forehead. Just one. Then two more. Then the sky opens. Not a drizzle, not a polite mist. This is the kind of downpour that feels like someone punched a hole in the clouds and forgot to patch it. The elephants don't flinch. They welcome it. Ears open, trunks lifted, feet stamping joyfully into the rising puddles. You see one calf try to drink mid-splash and almost tip over. Its mother catches it with her leg barely missing a beat. You stand in the rain, soaked instantly, laughing without meaning to. Not loudly. Just a breathy laugh that escapes when the weight in your chest gets too full to carry. You're wet. You're cold. You're ankle-deep in prehistoric joy. And here's your historical fact: in 1925, during a total solar eclipse in East Africa, dozens of eyewitnesses recorded that just minutes after the sun re-emerged, massive rain swept the region, unseasonal, unexpected, and in some places unprecedented. Local oral traditions claimed that elephants cried to bring the sky back, and the rain was the Earth's answer. You remember this because now here it's happening again. Rain and eclipse. Tears and light. The herd clusters together, not to huddle, just to be close. You see trunks wrapping around each other's shoulders. You see the matriarch tilt her head upward and breathe as if inhaling the moment itself. And you're trembling. Not from cold. From the feeling that the world is right for once. That this patch of mud and mammal in motion is older than cities, older than coins, older than written shame. Just rain and memory falling together. Then the herd begins to move again. You follow in their footprints now, filling with water. Each step squelches softly. It's satisfying, like pressing your hand into cool clay. Odd fact, elephants can detect distant rainfall through seismic vibration carried along the earth. They've been recorded changing course towards storms they couldn't possibly see or smell, responding to vibrations over 100 kilometers away. Some call it instinct. Others say it's memory passed through generations, a kind of oral tradition of the feet. You stumble a little. You're tired now, not just in the body, in the spirit. Like something you've been carrying quietly just got washed out of you, one muddy footprint at a time. The matriarch leads them to a shallow ridge, a natural platform made of sun-baked stone and ancient roots. They climb it without hesitation, gathering together at the top like old statues repositioning themselves for a final photograph. You follow your boots scraping as you clamber up. And then it happens. The rain stops. Not slowly, not in stages. It just ends. And for the first time all day you hear your own breath. You look up. The clouds part just enough to let a crack of sun through, brilliant, blinding, and gold-drenched. It cuts across the plain like a sword made of forgiveness. The elephants don't trumpet. They just stand there, wet, quiet, real, and the light makes halos around them. Historians still debate whether this specific eclipse, the one you've been following, the one you didn't know you came here to witness, was known to the ancient herders of this land. The arguments usually come down to, well, they didn't have telescopes, but telescopes don't make you watch. And the elephants, they've been watching longer than we've been speaking. You step back. Let the moment be what it is. And the matriarch turns. One final time. She meets your eyes. And it's not recognition. It's farewell. The herd turns one by one and walks down the other side of the ridge, away from the sun, away from you, into whatever ancient pattern called them here in the first place. You do not follow, because you know somehow completely that this was the end of your invitation. You stand there until the last echo of their footfalls fades into silence. And the earth is still, except for the puddles drying in the gold. The world doesn't reset. It just keeps going. After the herd disappears beyond the ridge, there's no cinematic cue, no mystical closing of the skies. Just wind brushing across the plain like a lazy broom. The sun is back to being the sun, hard, white, unforgiving. The clouds are already fleeing. You're alone again, but different. Like your body is still here, but your shadow stayed behind, curled up in the footprints you left in the wet dust. You walk, because that's what you do now. Not with urgency, not with purpose, just with gravity. You follow no path, only the faintest memory of the way the herd came. Past the old tree split by lightning. Past the still glimmering puddle where the water hasn't yet decided if it will soak in or disappear. Past the hill that sang. And eventually you come to a low ravine. It's unremarkable at first, just a crease in the land flanked by brittle grass and the bones of shrubs. But there's something off about the light here. It's dimmer, like the sun forgot how to reach into this fold of the earth. You step down and immediately feel colder. The ravine bends, narrows. The rocks tighten around you like they're narrowing their eyes. You keep going. That's when you find it. A shallow hollow in the cliff wall, barely deeper than a person's height, but the back wall is smooth. too smooth, smoothed by time or touch. And in the center, a sun disk, crude, chipped, chipped, painted in ochre. Below it, a crescent moon. And below that, scratched hastily a figure, 4 legs, 2 long ears, and eyes wide with streaks running down from them. It's a crying elephant, and next to it scrawled less skillfully, barely visible 3 characters, repeated several times. You squint. They're not letters, not any alphabet you know, just 3 lines over and over, like tally marks, or days, or maybe minutes. Then you notice something else. Beneath the painting lies a small pile of pebbles, not arranged, just gathered, as if someone or something left them there as tribute. You crouch, run your fingers over them. They're warm. You flinch. You scan the hollow for signs of fire. None. No soot. No scorch marks. But the rocks hum faintly with residual heat. You pick one up. It pulses in your palm. Not literally, but your nerves light up like a match just struck, a pulse you can't trace. You drop it. It lands without a sound. That's when the light changes again. Not outside, in the painting. The sun disk seems to shimmer. It's not glowing, but your eyes want it to be. You lean in, and that's when you feel the vibration. From the ground, faint, measured, like footsteps. You spin around. No one. But you hear it, a trunk's exhale. That low fluttering sigh only elephants make when they're standing still. You wait. Nothing comes. But then from somewhere behind you, beyond the ravine, you hear a sound that doesn't belong in this century. A trumpet, soft, muffled by distance or memory. You whisper aloud, "No way!" And then another, closer. You run. Out of the hollow, across the dry scrub, up the side of the ravine, your heart thudding like it's trying to speak. You crest the edge, and you see nothing. No herd. Just heat waves. Just wind. Just you. But then something flutters against your chest. You look down. The charm you left by the watering hole, hanging from your pack, back where it wasn't. You stare at it. It sways slightly, even though the wind has stopped. You're not alone. Not really. Here's your historical fact in 1907. A total eclipse passed over Central Africa, and local trackers claimed that an entire elephant herd vanished for 4 days. When they reappeared, they were dry, untouched, as if they had walked through a place without weather. Odd fact, one of the trackers had a carved elephant charm in his hand when he was found asleep beside their trail. He swore it wasn't his. Historians still debate whether that eclipse lasted longer than it should have. Some astronomical tables suggest it stretched past its predicted length by exactly 4 minutes. And the calf born that day, named Eclipse, not by researchers, by the elders. You stand on the edge of the ravine. You don't call out. You just wait and let the moment hang. You whisper, "Just once I heard you." And the wind answers by not answering at all. The walk back feels longer. Not because of the distance, but because your brain is still adjusting to gravity, emotional gravity. You feel heavier now, not in a bad way, just aware. Like every step presses a little deeper into the earth than it used to. As if the soles of your feet are remembering every place they've been and storing it in your bones for safekeeping. The sun has begun to sink. It's still daylight, but that late afternoon kind of daylight, the one that makes shadows look soft and people look kinder than they are. You follow a ridge marked faintly by elephant tracks, only visible in places where the dust has settled just right. The wind keeps brushing your shoulder like it's trying to get your attention. You ignore it. You're already listening to too many things. Then you see it. Atop the next hill, a mound. It's not dramatic. Just a gentle rise in the land like a shrug. But there's a pattern to it. Stones again. Larger this time. Arranged in rings, 3 concentric circles sloping inward. You approach slowly. There's no herd in sight, no sound. Just you and the hill. And the skulls. Not scattered. Placed. At least 20 of them elephant skulls, some weathered to the point of translucence. Others cracked. All arranged with the care of someone who understood the importance of placement. Some are turned outward toward the horizon. Others face the center as if still watching something they buried long ago. And then you see the pigment. A few of the skulls bear smudges, not accidental. These are finger marks, short, deliberate strokes of ash or dye or earth. Most are dark red, a few nearly black, but one near the center is streaked with faint white circles around the eyes. Like moons or tears, you kneel, and now you see the full pattern. The skulls aren't just in a circle. They form a calendar, not a perfect one, not numbered, but positioned to face cardinal directions with certain skulls aligning towards significant solar and lunar points. Equinox, solstice, eclipse paths. Here's your historical fact in Mali and Niger. Early Neolithic cultures built lunar-aligned stone circles that predated writing by thousands of years. Some believe these structures were both calendars and burial markers, but until now, no one connected those patterns with elephants. Yet here it is, not a tomb, a timekeeper, a place where memory is measured not in years but in tears. You stand slowly moving among the skulls with the reverence you didn't know you had. Each one carries a different expression. You're sure that's impossible, but it doesn't feel that way. Some tilt upward as if still questioning. Others bow low, as if already mourning. You pause at one near the edge. It's cracked wide at the forehead with one tusk missing. Inside the hollow, something glints. You reach in, pull it out. A charm? Ivory again, worn to near translucence. This one has a groove running along its length shaped like a crescent. You slip it into your palm gently. It's warm again, not unnaturally so, just enough to suggest it hasn't been waiting long. Odd fact, in 1859, a German explorer named Helmut Clausen recorded that desert nomads spoke of the ivory moon's tusks, carved to store time, hidden within bones, never to be removed unless another eclipse had come. Historians still debate whether these charms were real or just another colonial misunderstanding of myth. Most of Clausen's notes were lost. Only the phrase remains scribbled in a margin. They said the skulls sing when the moon turns black. You look around. It's silent, but not empty. The air hums, not with sound, but with presence. Then the wind picks up, harder now. You see a sheet of dust swirl across the mound and settle near the skull at the center. The one with the white pigment. It faces you. Your spine stiffens. Not out of fear, out of recognition. You step back slowly. And that's when you notice your own shadow again, long stretched by the lowering sun. But it doesn't move quite right. It hesitates as you turn. Only for a moment. Then it obeys. You breathe again. And finally, you sit, right there on the edge of the mound facing west. Because you realize something simple and terrible and true. You don't know what this place is for. But you do know it wasn't made by humans alone. The stones, the tusks, the pigment. This wasn't one species remembering another. This was a collaboration between those who could speak and those who couldn't stop remembering. The sun slides lower, not in a hurry, but with conviction. Its light now hits the mound at a slant, catching in the eye sockets of the skulls and turning them briefly into lanterns. You don't move. You just sit there, knees bent, elbows resting on thighs, fingers twined loosely in your lap like you're waiting for an ancient ceremony that doesn't include you, but also won't start without you. No elephants, not anymore. But the hill still holds their weight. The way the ground slumps between stones, the way the wind spirals through the skulls like it remembers how to hum in their key. Then something peculiar happens. You begin to cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a steady, unremarkable leaking. The way condensation forms on stone, you touch your cheek, surprised, even a little embarrassed, though no one's here to witness it but the hill. Maybe it's the charm, still warm in your palm. Maybe it's the mound, which feels less like a grave and more like a witness stand. Maybe it's because for all the skulls surrounding you, for all the silence and weight and dust, you finally believe the answer to the question that's been chasing you since the shadow fell. Yes, they did cry. Not for the sun, not for fear, but for the pause in the world. That unbearable silence when things that are always present light. Breath, warmth, suddenly aren't. That liminal gap where grief rushes in wearing every face you've ever lost. And elephants with their immense hearts and inch-thick memory feel that pause like a strike. Here's your historical fact. Biologists studying the amygdala, one of the brain's emotional centers, found that elephants have more intricate social emotion pathways than previously understood. The structure of their emotional memory rivals that of humans. One study found a matriarch returning to the dry bones of a dead calf 15 years later. She did not touch the bones. She just stood there, breathing. That's what this hill feels like. 15 years of breath. You stand again slowly. The charm is still clutched in your hand. You look at the central skull, the one ringed in white pigment. You step closer, knees, stiff back, sore heart too full. You lay the charm in its mouth. Not as a gift, as a confirmation. Odd fact, in 13th century Arabic travel journals, there's a mention of a place of circles in the deep south, a land where creatures made no temples but left their dead aligned with the stars, where their sadness grew fruit from the soil. The traveler, confused, simply wrote, "If they pray, it is with their feet." You back away, leaving the charm behind. You don't expect anything to happen, and nothing does. But the stillness feels different now. Not as heavy, more like a blanket than a burden. Historians still debate whether these so-called burial hills were constructed deliberately or formed naturally under the migration patterns of herds returning seasonally to ancestral resting grounds. Some argue it's selection bias. Others believe it's proof of long-term social memory across elephant generations. But none of them, not one, has sat where you just sat. Not in this light, not with this wind. You descend slowly from the mound shoes, leaving new marks in the soft soil between rings. You don't try to step over the skulls, you step between them. Carefully, precisely, like someone stepping through the grammar of a forgotten language. At the bottom, you pause. Look back. And just for a second, the white-rimmed skull catches the light again. Its eyes shine. Then the sun dips lower still, and it's just bone. You walk on. Not because you're ready, but because the story has no more pages here. The final stretch is the quietest. No birds, no wind, just the sound of your boots brushing through low, stubborn grass that hasn't grown an inch in 100 years. The ground feels flatter now, more open. The sky has gone the color of faded parchment, pale amber at the edges, darkening in slow rings toward violet. You're alone, but somehow not lonely. You move by instinct, not memory. There are no signs, no paths, but your body follows something deeper, something that pulls not from ahead, but from behind. Like the ground remembers your footsteps before you make them. You reach a ridge, low, grassy, almost forgettable, and climb. And there they are, far below, a modern herd. Smaller, fewer calves, less majestic in the way that makes books whisper, but real, living. They move differently. Less ceremony, more practicality. They nudge, nuzzle, shuffle. One trumpets weakly at a fly, another swats its own leg with a muddy tail. You stop to watch, not because they're part of the story you've just walked, but because they still are. The sun, low on the horizon, now throws long shadows behind them. Shadows that stretch like arms across the plain. And yours joins them, long too, slightly crooked. A smear of a person standing between two herds, one of flesh, one of bone. You exhale. This is it. Not the climax, just the closing of the curtain. You scan the sky. Clear, but then slowly, as if teasing you, a shape appears. The moon, a sliver. Rising where the sun will soon fall. Waning, soft-edged, gentle. You think of that calf, the one who walked toward the vanishing path and looked back. You think of the fruit, of the skulls, of the whispers stitched between stones. And you realize something that doesn't make logical sense but makes every other kind of sense. They remember the eclipses, not the way we do, not with star maps or time-lapse diagrams, but with feeling. They remember how the light twisted, how the air held its breath, how the ground hummed in mourning. And most of all, how they stood together motionless, trunk to trunk, as the sky blinked. and how when it ended they wept. You want to ask someone, anyone. You want to turn and say, "Did you feel it too?" But there's no one left. So you whisper it into the open dusk. Did they cry? And the sky, wide and growing darker, says nothing. It doesn't need to, because you already know. Yes, not every time. Not all of them. But some. Enough. Enough to leave skulls in circles. Enough to dance when the shadow falls. Enough to wait beside you quietly while the last eclipse passed. You sit again just for a minute. Let the final sliver of sun wrap your shoulders like a tired hand. The herd below begins to move again, north maybe or nowhere. They don't look up, but you do. Because now you carry something. Not proof, not knowledge, just witness. And when the darkness finally arrives, not sudden, not fearful, but slow like a bedtime story, wrapping its last sentence, you do not flinch. You lean into it. And you remember too. You walked beside ancient grief carried in the bones of elephants who never forgot the sky turning dark. From trembling plains under a too bright sun to caves filled with soot-painted moons, you followed the memory of something deeper than instinct, ritual, sorrow, maybe even love. The matriarch led the way, silent and knowing, while younger calves mimicked her movements, unsure whether they were playing or praying. You saw them dig for water in a dry world, offer their bodies to the rain, and sway to rhythms buried deeper than language. You watched a calf nearly cross into myth and turn back. You witnessed the cracked skulls of those who remembered every eclipse arranged not in fear, but in reverence. You stood among them and felt the weight of memory pressed into pigment, tusk, and soil. They cried once, or more than once. Not from fear, but from the silence between breaths when light vanishes and the world forgets how to move. And maybe, just maybe, they weren't the only ones. You came here asking a question with a smile. Did ancient elephants really cry during eclipses? And now, standing at the end of it all, soaked in dusk and silence, you carry a quieter answer. Yes, not always, but sometimes. And those sometimes shape the earth beneath your feet.